Email marketing is a must-have for your business. And in addition to sales email marketing, nurture email marketing is just as important. But often we don't think about it as being as important as our sales marketing. Not everyone is going to buy right away. And so for the people that don't, you really need an effective nurture marketing strategy to put in place so that you can continue to build trust so that you have more people buying later. So before we dive into this topic and I introduce our guest for today, I want to offer you a gift that's going to help you jumpstart your business in under 30 days. Now, in this freebie, I'm going to take you through a worksheet and an exercise to help you discover what knowledge or skills you already have that you can turn into another revenue stream. So if this is your first business that you're starting, or maybe you're dabbling in network marketing or affiliate marketing and you want to have your own offer that you put out into the world and generate revenue, or you just want to expand on what you're doing, this exercise is going to be for you to help you get clarity on what that offer might be without having to learn something new. Then I've put together a guide for you to help you launch this idea in under 30 days with less than an hour a day. So go ahead and grab the free gift at thechristychin.com/profit so you can learn how to turn your knowledge into a profit and launch in under 30 days. Hey friend, welcome to the Badass is the New Black podcast, where our motto is done is better than perfect. I'm Chrissy Chin, here on a mission to help you grow your business online, turn your leads into lifelong customers, and scale to 6 figures and beyond so you can work less and enjoy and earn a whole lot more. Most importantly, I'm a laid-back wife, a mom, a friend who started as a peds nurse, turned network marketer, and now a serial entrepreneur. This podcast is for ambitious people with an idea, a vision, but no idea how to get there. On this podcast, I'll give actionable steps to keep you moving forward while you learn new business strategies, better systems and processes, marketing, sales, all the things you need to build and scale a blissful business that keeps your pocketbooks growing. Grab a beverage, open up your notes app, and let's get to it. Muse, magician, mentor, marketer, creative. These are the most common words that precede an introduction to Tamika Auwai. Tamika is the CEO of Orisha Creative and the creator of the Nurture Matrix, an evergreen nurture marketing framework that's revolutionizing the way master coaches approach email marketing, generating millions in additional revenue along the way. Now, I brought Tamika on here to talk about nurture marketing. We've talked a lot about sales marketing. It's kind of one of my favorites. Like, let's convert our customers to paying customers. But nurture marketing is incredibly important. So Tamika, I'm so glad you're here. I'm getting chills just thinking about the conversation that we're going to have because nurture marketing is incredibly important.
It is important. And, it's just a little bit pre-sales, right? Like, it's actually the thing that's going to make your sales work so much better. So I'm glad to share and dig into it too.
Yeah, 100%. And I know people have like different styles of nurture marketing. So I'm kind of excited to hear and learn about your style that you like to share and teach to other people. So I don't know, where do you want to start? Where's the best place to start? You're kind of the expert in this.
Yeah, you know what? Why don't we give people, I love context. Context is everything for me. So why don't we give a little bit of a what the heck is she talking about? Nurture marketing,
Yes, love it.
Why does this deserve a whole podcast episode on its own? So so nurture marketing, well, first I want to tell you what a lot of folks think nurture marketing is, right? Because you talked about the fact that on the show, there's always conversation about sales and how do we convert. And obviously sales and conversion are really important. If we're not making sales, we don't have a business. Now, nurture marketing tends to get the definition of being any content or any kind of messaging or marketing that you put out that is not directly asking for the sale. So we think, sales messaging or sales marketing is all about that call to action, go ahead, book, buy, whatever it is that you need to do to exchange cash money. And we think, okay, well, when we're not doing that, then we are nurturing. And that is true. That is true. But it's a very surface level. That's a very surface layer sort of definition. In my world, nurture marketing is what is supposed to happen between someone becoming a new lead and then becoming becoming a client or someone that, enrolling, right? The nurture marketing aspect, though, the part that I like to really dig into is the reminder that when someone joins your world, joins your list, joins your community as a new lead, on that journey to becoming a client, it really is a journey. And so nurture marketing, and the kind of the distinction that I like to bring to the table, is that nurture marketing is designed to take a new lead and have them become a new client. It is designed to take your customers or your clients along a buyer's journey, a journey that we all go through no matter what we're buying. It looks different depending on what we're buying, but we all go through this when we are making a buying decision. We go along a little journey, making that decision whether or not we're going to put out our money and invest, right? And so your nurture marketing is not just the place where you're sort of devoid of call to action. Rather, you are inviting your prospects to move closer and closer and closer to making that decision of working with you. And that's why, if we are really thinking strategically about nurture marketing and going beyond the fact that we're just putting any old thing out there, while we're not making sales, while we're not making sales call to action, we miss an opportunity, right? By being having a little more context and being a little bit more strategic, we start to think instead about how can I nurture in a way that has folks lean in, lean closer, and become ready to buy, maybe even before I make that official sales invitation.
Yeah, I think that's how you know you have a good nurture sequence, is when they're like waiting for that email that's like, give me the thing to buy, or they seek you out and are asking like, how do I get this? Or how do I work with you? Like, that's when you know you have an incredible nurture sequence, right?
Exactly. That's the one that, a lot of our clients report. It's like, oh, the cart wasn't even open. And we have people like trying to get on our calendars or sending us DMs and saying like, when is this going to open? Or is there something I can do in between? Right. It shifts the game a little bit, because sales is so much about kind of outward marketing and putting yourself out there in order to have someone say yes, or making that direct invitation. And nurture marketing works kind of in the opposite. It's kind of drawing people in, having them, I call it the lean in factor, right? Having people sort of lean towards wanting to work with you, being ready to join a wait list, or, again, kind of reaching out and saying, hey, when's this thing opening? Or what can we do in between?
Yeah. And I'm sure you guys listening have heard of like the know, like, and trust factor. I've mentioned it so many times before. Everyone talks about it. So it's like the nurture sequence is that extra opportunity to get them to know you, to like you, to trust you, so that they are saying like, okay, give me the thing. Like, I'm ready to do this with you. Everything that you said, is great. So let's dive in a little bit to the nurture. When I think of nurture, just kind of like a surface level, if I'm not really getting strategic about it, the first thing that pops into my head is like, oh, I have to like tell them my story or about me, and I think that might be what people are thinking when they think of a nurture, like, oh, it's just some emails to tell them all about me. What would you say to someone who kind of came to you saying that?
Yeah, well, your story is important. Certainly we buy from people that we know and like, and we, know and like people by hearing their story and finding that kind of resonance, that commonality, whether it's aspirational or just, relational, right? And we have to remember again that if we want folks to be ready to buy, they have to go along their journey, and their journey is not about you,
right?
Or your story. Their journey is about them and their story. So where there is place to certainly weave in your story, what the approach to nurture that I'm, will go to the mat for, and I'm really passionate about, is centering your ideal client's experience and telling stories. Like, yes, you can certainly, speak to what has happened in your experience and what your expertise is, but really bringing them back to what's going on for them. How does this make sense for them? What's the conversation that they're having in their head around why they can't get their problem solved? Because I promise you, it's not about you and your story and your experience. Like, that's not the conversation. It's not, well, I joined this person's list and I wonder what, brought them here today. Certainly they're interested and curious, but they want to know, like everyone wants to know, what's in it for them? How is this going to help me? And most importantly, that know, like, and trust factor that you talked about, that trust, in my experience, is really developed when you can show someone else that you really understand what they're going through, that you understand their problem or what's coming up for them deeper than they even understand it themselves. And you're able to present to them a new vantage point or a new perspective that they hadn't considered before. That's where the trust comes in from a leadership perspective, right? There's obviously different layers of trust, right? The way we trust our parent would be different than a coworker, than a boss, than a mentor we might hire. So, we have to remember that there's different ways that trust shows up. But in the business world, trust in my experience, again, it really shows up as like, you are an expert who knows everything that's going on with me. And you're able to constantly show me like these different blind spots that I might have that are keeping me sort of cycling in my problem versus on my way to solution. The trust gets built up there.
I love that, sharing the new perspective. That's like what really just stood out to me in that moment. And we talk about this when we talk about like building our about page on our website. Like, it's not really about you, right? And I liked how you mentioned just kind of about helping them see that you understand. I think that's an opportunity where we can use our story but making sure it's tied to what they're thinking about, what they're struggling with, what they're searching for, and that they can see like, oh, she's been through this, but it's always with your customer in mind. Right. Like, whatever story you're sharing, like, it has to be something that the customer is going to relate to.
1000%. A quick rule of thumb, like if you're creating nurture content or nurture email or something like that, and you notice that like every other sentence starts with I, this, that, I, right? You're probably not flipping it in the way that it really is resonating. There's absolutely a way to weave in, your story and your experience, but have it completely center your ideal client. And that is just so much more powerful than it being kind of the, Tamika show or Chrissy show, right?
Yeah.
They want something different.
Yeah, 100%. You can even do that I/you switch. So if you have to start something like a little story off with I, but then midway through you switch it to you so that you're speaking to your customer. That's like in marketing copy, y'all. If you aren't using the you statements so that your reader really sees that it's about them, then you need to take a look at your copy.
100%.
Love it. Okay. Let's see. How are there tips or things that you can recommend to make sure that you have qualified prospects that are, we've talked about this, like ready to buy, raising their hand, seeking you out, wanting to work with you? Any special tips you can give us in that department?
Yeah. So again, because this is all so centered in who your ideal client is, the best thing that you can do for yourself is really do your job to understand them intimately. If you've worked with some clients already, that means like really deep interviewing them to understand not just, where they were at the moment of being ready to buy, but what was the sort of story that led up to that. Again, if we're going through this process and we're really wanting our nurture to help people become ready to buy, we actually have to start to think about them well before they're ready to spend their money. We have to kind of like take a step back, right? Because again, in this buyer's journey, we have these different stages of buying. And we start out with an awareness stage where we're kind of just, sort of aware of the problem, or not even necessarily aware of a problem, but aware that something's not going right. We've got all these symptoms kind of going on and we're like, why is this happening to me? But we don't know that there's a problem that we can name. And then we kind of move on to becoming more problem aware, right? And we're kind of, okay, yeah, I do have a problem. And we start to seek out solutions. How might I solve this problem, right? So we go through, all the way to the point where we're in decision-making mode and we're ready to buy. So the best thing you can really do for yourself is think about the conversation, or kind of, if you can get firsthand research, great. If you have to use a little bit of intuitive, guessing until you have evidence, that's fine too. But you want to think about like, what's the conversation my prospect might be having when they're in the awareness phase, when they've just got all these weird symptoms happening and they don't have a problem that they can attach to it. What's that look? What are they thinking about there? What do the symptoms look like? What might they not be aware of, right? And then, think about in the exploration phase, when they know they have a problem and they're starting to seek solutions, what does that look like? What does that conversation look like, right? And just kind of map out, what are these conversations that our people might be having? And we can start to create content to address that, right? A lot of times we think about nurture content, and again, we think of this surface level definition. So we're like, well, let me just create something to stay visible and valuable, right? Those are kind of the two V's we hear a lot: stay visible and valuable before we make the sale, right? And we just have to flip that to understand that that visibility, right? There's a certain aspect to that, right? You have to, you want to stay top of mind, but the the lens that we put on value isn't necessarily like create a bunch of tips and tricks and, give them things to do in between. Rather, the value comes in again when you can have your people think about their problem in a different way, because when they start to think about their problem in a different way, it opens them up to becoming ready for that solution that much quicker. So really just focusing on the buyer's journey and that conversation they're having in their head, and doing your best to come up with content, to address that. That's going to change the game for you.
I'm going to totally put you on the spot and ask if you have an example of putting that in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's think about if we are a health coach, and we are a health coach or a weight loss coach or something like that, who our special sauce is that we help people release weight without going on diets. Right. So we have to think about, our ideal clients, they want to release the weight, but they probably think, because of everything that is in that industry, they probably think that a punishing diet is going to be needed, or some kind of like radical life change is going to be needed. So before that particular customer starts to look for help for their, to release weight, they're in the awareness phase. They might be going through things like, just trying every diet under the sun and never seeing results, or losing a bunch of weight up front and then, gaining it all, 6 months later. So in the awareness phase, they might not be understanding at all at that point that like the reason that they can't keep the weight off is because diets don't work, right? Mm-hmm. Making broad statements. I'm not a health coach. Let's just put that out there, right? Right? But they don't know yet that the reason that they can't keep the weight off is because they aren't meant to be on a diet in the first place. So we have to start to create content that is going to really speak to that, and sort of, think about an email that's like, 5 reasons your last diet didn't work, right? Mm-hmm. That's helping them shift their perspective around the dieting. Right. So it's messaging like that. So we're going through like, what is that conversation they're having in their head? What are the sort of sticky points or things that they might not know about? How can I speak to that for them so that they shift their perspective? We want to do that along the journey. So that's on the awareness end. When we start to get into sort of the next phase, when they're more problem aware, now they might be like, okay, maybe this diet thing is not actually what I should be doing. So, okay, if it's not the diet, then what is it? Like, is it, working out all the time? Or is it, having a diet that's not so restricting, right? They start to think about what are the different ways. If having a punishing diet isn't the way, that prospect might be thinking, okay, well, what are the other ways? At that point, then, that coach who believes in, that you don't need a punishing diet, they're going to start to say, okay, well, let's create some content now around why exercise alone isn't going to be the thing that's going to, have you release the weight, or how perhaps exercise alone might even be damaging or create another cycle of unhealthy eating, right? Or how, certain diets that seem really flexible are actually really bad for you because maybe they're too high fat or something like that. So we're going to start to do educating around the next sort of, kind of conversation that our prospects having. And we're doing that all the way along the buyer's journey. And actually, most folks, again, since we spend a lot of time talking about sales, they're probably aware of how you do that kind of thing in the sales conversation, right? You're usually busting objections and doing a lot of that when you're wanting to, close, but you just want to back it up a little bit and think about what's the conversation that needs to happen a little bit earlier that would have the person have less resistance when you actually make that invitation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 100%. And so is that kind of the secret to creating content that converts, or do you have another?
No, that's absolutely it. It's that intersection of getting really clear on, again, the experience that your prospects are having, and picking out those core messages that they need to hear over and over again as they move along their buyer's journey. We call them core nurture themes in our world, right? So figuring out what these core nurture themes are along the buyer's journey, and then creating content around that. And I guess there is one little other secret. The other little secret is that these core nurture themes need to happen on repeat. We have this idea in this content-driven world that like we always need to be creating. It's like ABCs, always be creating. And we need to come up with like 365 different, post or content ideas, one for every day of the year. So we put ourselves on this like content creation treadmill, churning out all this messaging. And that leads us kind of down this road of trying to come up with new and novel and creating all this stuff. But really, when we identify what the core nurture themes are, those are the things that need to happen on repeat. repeat, because again, until your prospects like really get this, they're not gonna make change. So giving them, again, if we go with our health coach or our health coach there, giving someone a sample meal plan to use for a day or something like that, that's not necessarily shifting the perspective that they need to have to actually go and hire. It's giving them something to go try and kind of actually leaving your prospects cycling in their problem a little bit more while they go and try to figure out how to solve it on their own, because they think if I can just stick to this one day meal plan that I was given, I won't even need a coach, right? When the reality is what they need to hear are those same pillars over and over again about the fact that, again, diets don't work, and why not, of course, and the fact that, having these other ways of releasing weight aren't the best best way to do that, to release weight. And then when you get to the sales side of things, that's where you're going to be talking about, why you as that particular weight loss coach is going to be the best solution, right? So when we get into the sales place, we're really, talking about why your solution is the unique, best, perfect, everything else, right? But we want to really have that on repeat so that our people get it into their bones and then they make that change. Giving them all the other stuff isn't necessarily going to cut it.
Yeah, love that. And I love that you said this is going to help us get off of that content creation treadmill, because I think that is certainly for me the exhausting point of thinking of, gosh, I have to come up with all of this new stuff. No, you have to keep repeating yourself over and over again. Not everyone is going to see your post every day. Not everyone is going to read every single email. Not everyone is going to listen to every single podcast or read every blog post. And so you have to continuously do repetition. I mean, I've had multiple people come on and talk about copywriting and email marketing, but everyone also kind of has their own little twist on it. And you've shared some great, valuable content here, but also like we need to keep the message going. Right? So what would you recommend in terms of like, you have these core themes, how often are you cycling them through? Like, do you have a recommendation? Like if you have 5 core themes, like you should be doing like one every 9 posts, or once a month, or every quarter you're kind of cycling through. What's your recommendation on that?
Yeah. So like a lot of things with marketing, it really depends on sort of industry and audience and what you're offering and everything else. Within our framework, the Nurture Matrix, we look at a 90-day cycle, just kind of taking the average and looking at sort of what's happening in online sales in general across the board, not just in the coaching or online course creating space. But it kind of takes someone, or it can take folks up to like 90 days to kind of make a decision. And again, that's going to vary depending on how complex the problem is they're trying to solve, what the competition is like in that industry. But, for all intents and purposes, a quarter made sense. So when we think about a quarter, then we also think about, okay, well, what's sort of the minimum that you want to be, connecting with your audience a week? And the minimum you want to be connecting with your audience, every single week is like once a week. So from that perspective, we came up with the framework that's like 12 emails over 90 days. And we have some folks who implement it as like 2 emails a week over 6 weeks instead. And, it can look a little bit different. We've got folks who have like 20 nurture themes because it's a more complex, decision-making process and everything else. But I think, kind of coming up with 12 themes, or aiming to come up with 12 themes, and thinking about, connecting with your audience at least once a week, kind of putting them through a nurture sequence that way. Generally is our recommendation. And then you can repeat that up to, 4 times a year. Works nicely in the calendar as well. So kind of once a quarter, you're taking folks through this nurture sequence. And I want to point out that this doesn't mean that you never create, other content. Certainly if you have a podcast like this one, you're going to also have some messaging that's like, come and check the next podcast episode and everything else. Like this particular sequence that we're talking about, or how the Nurture Matrix works, it's like, it's an aspect of nurture marketing. And certainly there are other pieces that you can layer into it. But at minimum, this is what you want to be doing. You want to be identifying what those core nurture themes are, and minimum getting them out to your, especially to your new subscribers, at least once a week for the, kind of the first 60 to 90 days of them being on your list. And then you can repeat them, or, you can start to switch it up a little bit. But like, we want that initial sort of runway to have everyone's heads and hearts sort of oriented towards solving the problem. And another piece I just wanted to bring in there real quick is that when you are thinking about your people, and you mentioned not everyone sees everything, and no one's opening every single email, there's also the possibility that they received an email in week 1. And then in week 13, they received the exact same message, but everything, and they read it both times, but everything in their experience has shifted over those 12 weeks, right? So we have to remember that even if someone's received a message already, things are constantly changing in our lives every single day. So your prospect who received the message on day 1 is going to be different than the one that receives it on day 91. Their whole entire, situation could change. And that receiving that message again could be that catalyst that has them sort of lean in. It's like, yes, now is the time to buy. And that's really what we're creating around.
Yeah, 100%. There's been so many times where I'm like, I've heard that same thing. And now I'm just at this different place in my life or in my business, and I know that it's happened with me with clients before. It's like, I've told them this thing. And then 3 months later, they hear it from someone else and they're like, oh my gosh, mind blown. And I'm like, yeah, I told you that 3 months ago. I'm not saying that. I'm like, thank God you finally got the message, right? Even if it wasn't from me, like, fine. But it is so true. Like, they need to hear it so many different times, and it might resonate. It might be a year later and it resonates completely different. And that's where, that's where the value comes in connecting with them regularly. So question, kind of for my own curiosity, when someone signs up for a freebie, there's kind of mixed things on, and I think this really has to do with personality types, because there are the people that want to take action right away, and I teach, if you are really seeking out that person that's ready for that transformation, even when they're grabbing your freebie, like, hopefully you can get them to convert a lot quicker. But what would you say if they download the freebie, and then I know this nurture sequence is kind of like once a week, kind of ongoing. Do you do some type of nurture to sales that's like pretty quick after a freebie for the people that want to take action fast? And then those that don't, this is where they kind of tap into this weekly, and then it might take, the personalities that are more analytical take a little bit longer. That's where they might take the 90 days. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you got it. So this whole, the whole premise of the nurture matrix kind of came to be when I was really thinking, okay, it's like, in all of these funnels, doesn't matter what the funnel looks like, there is, a small percentage, depending on what you're offering in the industry and all that stuff. It could be like as little as maybe 1%, maybe 0.5%, but like, a small percentage up to maybe, 10 or 15, or 20, if you're like amazing, at or just in an industry where that's normal. But largely, there's only a certain percentage of folks who join your list that are going to be in that real activated, ready to buy stage, right? So we can absolutely make a call to action for those people. However, most of us forget about the other, 97, or 80 to 97%, right? So that's where the extended sort of nurture sequence comes in. That's where the nurture matrix comes in. But when folks join your list, I believe, that's the place where they join the list, you give them what was promised, right? You have a little delivery sequence. Then you can have a little bit of a welcome sort of into a initial sales sequence, right? So you want to, I don't call that a nurture sequence so much, because in my view, it's like 3 days of nurture is not really nurture. I call it a welcome sequence. And what we're doing is we're welcoming in those people who are like ready to go right away. And so we take it into the sale really quickly, if that, at least give them an opportunity. So again, it's going to kind of depend on what your funnel looks like. But, I think of, a lot of funnels where it's like you get a immediate download and then they might take you to like a sales webinar or something like that. Certainly, if that's how you're set up, once they get that initial freebie, heck yeah, take them over to get to the webinar for sure. Give them that opportunity to buy. Or if it's a book a call situation, sure. Once they get that immediate thing, it's almost like rude not to say, and by the way, if you took this in and really spoke to you and you need some help right now, like, here's how you can do that. Like, in my view, it's rude not to do that, because there are people who legitimately are looking to get support right away. We just don't want to forget about the rest. I call that, like, when you forget about the rest in my world, it's like having a leaky bucket in your funnel, or like having a leak in there. Because all these folks who demonstrated that they were, that they've got a problem that you could potentially solve, they are either unsubscribing or just like, opting all the way out, because they're not getting what they need to actually lean in. They're getting kind of a bunch of tips and tricks and everything else, kind of popcorn content, and not really getting what they need to kind of, again, have that lean in factor and be ready for the sale.
Yeah. I just want to hit again that the percentages that you said, because that is so the truth, that a very small percent is ready to buy instantly right now. And you said, whether or not this was like inaccurate, but like 97%, right? Like that's a large amount. So don't get discouraged by, obviously, if nobody's buying, if you have a smaller offer, let's say, $7 to $200 or something, and you're throwing them like a simple downloadable and you're throwing them into a marketing sequence, a sales sequence, and nobody's purchasing, like we need to look at the messaging here. But if you have a small percent purchasing, like that's probably good. And you really need to focus on your nurture so that, you can convert those later. I mean, we're focusing on nurture for the next, sorry, I have acorns dropping on my glass skylights. This time of year is always the best. Those loud thuds. For the next like 5 months, we're doing all kinds of nurture before we launch our new masterclass and open up, a new revised program. So it's like nurture is like the long game, and you have to be in it for the long game.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It really is a long game strategy. I'll be honest, that sometimes makes it easy to ignore. It really, the long game nurture is not as sexy as the, like, let's have a sales sequence that's going to, close all the people tomorrow. But the reality is, and those numbers that I shared with you, again, like they are real numbers. It just kind of depends on what audience, what offer, pricing. There's so many different variables, but like there are folks out there that are only really converting like 1% to 2% off the top of their funnel. So again, the other 98, 97, percent, like we gotta take care of them. And we gotta understand that like it may not be on week 3 that they're ready either. It really might be, week 12 or, week 24, or in your case that you mentioned, sometimes there's the super analytical people and again, we can't pass judgment. They're just, everyone's in their process. It could be up to a year. And so we really have to be willing to think about our email list as an asset and our content that we're creating as assets, as opposed to them being like a sales slot machine, which is what I do feel a lot of folks are like secretly hoping that that's what their email marketing and what their funnel will do for them. But that's just not the way that it works. However, if you are wrong and you figured it out, let Christy and I know, because like
share that magical tip. No, and it's true. And I always like when I get a sale on, one of the bigger programs that we have, I always like to go back and like kind of do detective work and be like, where did they come from? How much have they been paying attention? Because I can see, what emails they're opening, what freebies they've downloaded. And had someone purchase our big program recently, and she signed up 2 years ago when I did a virtual summit, and hadn't had too much, interaction. That was basically like she didn't have any other freebies, but she had been opening emails here and there, had stayed on our email list. And then we released a quiz. She took the quiz. It led her to the masterclass. She watched the masterclass and she purchased. So it could have just been that the timing 2 years ago, I mean, besides the fact that we didn't have this big, robust program then, right? Wasn't available, but the timing just might have been completely different. But thankful to the nurture, the podcasts that I put out, the emails that I send out, she's been here, somewhat paying attention for 2 years, and boom, there she is. So, not every single person is going to take 2 years, but you do have to remember that, like, not everyone's going to sign up on day one. This is the long game. If you're serious about your business, you're going to have to put in work consistently, and it's going to pay off over time.
Yeah. The cool thing I want to mention as well is that the detective work actually gets to be like a really great clue for you about how you can start to sort of modify things as you go, right? We put an initial nurture sequence out and we kind of see how it plays out. But as you start to get clients in and you start to do that work of like seeing where they went, that can give you some intel around, what should I do more of? Or what's a really great lead source for me? Like those kinds of pieces. If we have the long nurture game in there, you're right. We have the data to be able to go back and sort of kind of reverse engineer and try to get more folks who are like our ideal in our programs, which I think is really great. One of the things that a team member of ours set up was a lead scoring sort of thing. So based on the frequency of emails open, we have people like, kind of at the top of the list who are super engaged, and we can see them and, connect with them on social and like interact with them a little bit more because we kind of go through and follow the paper trail and see what they're doing. So it just, that's advanced kind of moving down the road, but it sets you up to be able to do some really cool things down the line that just help you increasingly connect with and enroll like the right people in your programs, which is, of course, very fulfilling.
Love that. Tamika, this has been amazing. I've gotten some great golden nuggets. I know our listeners have as well. I just want to thank you for being here, for taking the time out of your day to share this knowledge with us and talk to us a bit more about this topic. I want everyone to be able to go connect with you. So if you want to share kind of where your favorite place to hang out is, what your handles are, and then you have a free gift I want you to share a little bit about.
Yes, happy to. So generally Instagram is our jam. It's where we hang out most. You can find us at Orisha Creative. So that's an easy way to connect there. And then our gift that we have this scorecard that we've created. It's a self-assessment. We call it the Nurture Opportunity Scorecard. And what it allows you to do is to go through what you're doing right now in the name of nurture across email and social media, and just start to get present to some areas where there might be gaps or opportunities for you to sort of tighten things up and shore up your nurture marketing game. So it just gives you kind of like a baseline to work from and to grow from, and to give you some inspiration around how you can start to make some tweaks and changes.
Love that. I'm definitely going to do the scorecard. I know there's always room for improvement wherever we are in our journey, whether we've been at it for a month or 7 years or 10 years, like there's always new little things, new little nuggets that we can take in and implement into our strategy. So thank you again so much for being here. This has been awesome. Everyone listening, go connect. Follow her on Facebook, Instagram, and get that free gift. It's an opportunity to get some extra golden nuggets. So Tamika, thank you for being here and can't wait to chat again soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning in. If you got some value out of this episode, I would love some support. And the best way to do that, so I can keep showering you with loads of actionable tips, is to hit that subscribe button. Leave a review or a comment if you're on YouTube, and share this podcast with a friend. And when you share it with a friend on social, please tag me so I can reshare your share in my stories. It's been an absolute pleasure hanging out. I appreciate the heck out of you for showing up. And now it's time for you to take imperfect action so you can work less and enjoy and earn a whole lot more.